Leading international organizations have warned of the risks of a global recession sparked by the coronavirus. It's infected more than 88,000 people, and the death toll exceeds 3,000, mainly in China. 60 countries now have been affected. Joining me in the studio to discuss the OECD's remarks, as well as the global economy, the agro-commodities, and so on and so forth, is Dumebi Iyeke, an analyst from Financial Derivatives. Dumebi, you're welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Excellent, excellent, excellent. So let's start off with our burning issues here. Yeah. Right. So I see Senegal is at the top of the list. Take us through it.
The coronavirus has, largely depleted a lot of economies, and we find it creeping into Africa. And, Egypt has confirmed the first case of the coronavirus, which is already increasing. Algeria, Senegal now has 2 cases of coronavirus. South Africa just recently confirmed its first case of the coronavirus. Nigeria, as at today, is having probably 2 other cases.
Yeah, I heard about that.
Apart from the Italian one. Exactly,
right.
Exactly. So we find that it's slowly creeping into Africa. The fear now is Africa's economy. Most countries don't have standard healthcare facilities to combat this virus as quickly and as fast as possible. So we're seeing panic but precautionary responses from countries like Kenya, Uganda. Kenya, for one, has suspended flights to China, and you also find that in airports, they're having people use a lot of sanitizers. Everyone is being very cautious because of the virus. And in response to that, we're seeing that the OECD has revised global growth downwards to 2.4%. So this is the first time this is happening since the financial crisis in 2008. And we find that this downward revision is largely due to the coronavirus because of how it has affected the global economy. China is one of the biggest economies in the world, and seeing their economy going down the way it is because of the virus, we see that replicating in various commodities and especially the oil prices. Hence, we have OPEC also being in response to this, revising oil production downwards again by 1.5 million barrels per day. Yeah.
Subject, of course, to Russia saying yes or no and other plus. What about the? This is federal government in Nigeria. They're looking at possibly rejigging their budget. That's also, of course, due to the virus as well.
To that, exactly.
Has FTC taken any bets on whether or not we're going to have a global recession or not? You guys haven't, yeah, have you? Because that's pretty scary. It's pretty scary.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
Let's see what else we have here. I think we're moving to commodities. Yeah. What are we seeing with as far as these agro-commodities? Price movements left and right. What's happening?
Yes. The price movements generally have been mixed. We find that prices that are not commodities that are not so price elastic, they remained relatively stable over the month, and we find that due to some of the imbalances in the global market for commodities, we have prices of commodities like sugar going up, coming down, being quite volatile.
Right.
And, Nigeria exports some of these commodities like wheat, sugar, imports some of these commodities like wheat, sugar, and we find that when the global economy is not stable, it affects Nigeria's import balance. So we find that Nigeria has to spend more on importing these commodities. So generally, the price of these commodities the ones that are not so price elastic, price sensitive, remained stable, while sugar prices have gone up because of the global market distortions.
Interesting. Have we forgotten, or are we moving away from the border closure and no longer talking about the effects it's having on commodities?
We've seen over time that the border closure has affected major commodities like rice. So these staple commodities that people consume on a daily basis that were highly imported, we find that their price have been highly volatile. Regardless, now that the commodities market for rice, or the demand for rice, has relatively been stable, because we find people moving towards the local locally produced rice now. And we also find that there are actions to encourage locally produced rice. So we find that more rice mills are coming up. For example, there's a move to encourage more rice mills with the youths in Sokoto State. And Sokoto is very prominent for rice production. The soil there is very good. So if we have more rice mills there, rice production would definitely increase. So we've not moved past the border closure stage, but we can see progress from the domestic economy in that particular area to encourage rice production and some other staple commodities that are highly demanded for. However, we're moving into the planting season. So there will definitely be an uptick in prices, especially because the Easter period is also coinciding with the planting season. So we'd find that price for major commodities like rice, tomato would have an uptick in those areas.
Now, I'm showing, as far as, you've mentioned rice, Gary, beans, cement, tomatoes, pepper, everything's almost flat.
Exactly.
Not moving, except for flour. Flour's gone up.
Yes.
And so this is all part of what you've mentioned,
yes? Exactly. So there are measures right now to encourage locally produced commodities. Speaking on the federal government, wanting to review, having a midterm review on the budget. Like I said, it's a response to the effect of the coronavirus. And this is because the 2020 budget was done with the mindset that oil prices would be around $57 per barrel. And now that this the price for oil has gone down like approximately, it's approximately $50 per barrel. That's a $7 loss. We find that the revenue definitely, oil receipts have reduced drastically. It's very evident in the external reserves. We find that external reserves has really gone down. It's almost $35 billion right now. So with that, we find that the government is trying to approach this in a much more faster light and a swift manner by revising the budget. So if this happens, the question now is, where would the government get funds to approach or move the runnings of the economy?
Taxes.
Exactly.
Taxes. Tax everybody. Tax you.
Tax everybody.
Arise TV viewers. Tax them all. Yeah, that's where the money is going to come from.
And when that happens, we find that the disposable income of people is relatively reduced, and this affects aggregate demand. And we'll also find that the government will move to borrowing. And we've seen that the government right now has issued a Eurobond. Rather, they're considering issuing a Eurobond of $3.3 billion just to push up or offset the effect of the falling oil price and oil revenue receipts. And this is a speculation now. If the oil prices continue to deplete, we'll find that the government would find itself in the international market scrambling for funds to meet up with the internal demand and internal responsibilities. And other proxies like the FAC disbursement will reduce further. So we'll find that state governments and local governments now will be struggling to, the amount of money that they would have to run their internal affairs would reduce, ultimately affecting disposable income. And also the OPEC reduction, Nigeria is more oil production sensitive than oil price sensitive.
Interesting.
So if oil production rather goes down, we would find that Nigeria's oil production could also reduce. And if this happens, oil production would have, dwindled for a really long while. And we hope that the reduction in oil production can offset the the oil production, reducing oil production is a measure to offset the falling oil prices. So meaning that if oil production reduces, prices are supposed to increase. So we're hoping that the reduction in oil prices can offset.
Hope is great.
Exactly.
Hope is great. Except Nigeria has never topped 2.1 million barrels per day. Speaking of disposable income, so we're still, this is back to what you're talking about as far as the commodities. So we're, now as opposed to what we just saw, all right, in the other chart, prices here are all down.
Yeah.
From wheat, corn, cocoa, everything.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And so what? Market forces essentially, or
yes. Market forces. Well, here we're just seeing the market forces of demand and supply playing.
Economics 101.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Economics 101. So the reason why these other arrows are green, apart from cocoa, is because when these prices go down for wheat, corn, sugar, it's positively affects Nigeria's balance of trade, because now the country doesn't have to spend as much to get these commodities. But for cocoa that we export, when the price is down, Nigeria's export balance reduces.
Right.
So and this negatively affects Nigeria's fiscal position.
Fascinating dynamic. So what about your outlook? How do you see things? It's a touchy year with regards to what's going on. We're waiting to see what OPEC says later today. We're waiting to see, how Nigeria revises it. But as far as outlooks for, I guess, the commodities and I guess, okay, so agricultural prices, how are you seeing things?
We're hoping that the prices for cocoa come up, because we've seen Ivory Coast and Ghana have issued a premium on cocoa.
Because they want more money.
Of course.
Yeah, of course they do.
Despite the fact that, so with this premium, we still see that production of cocoa has increased in this area. So we're hoping that prices of cocoa increase in the coming weeks and coming months. We also hope that the price of these grains, increase as well.
Hope.
We hope. I mean, it's all speculation, looking at what's happening in the economy.
So what about oil? What about your oil outlook? Any hope there as well?
Of course there is. Of course there is. And this is because
OPEC comes to an agreement.
We really hope so. We really hope Russia agrees to this, because
I kind of doubt they will. But
well,
we're
hoping for the best. I mean, because right now we're all dwelling on hope. For oil prices, like I said, we're hoping. Again,
based on
what's happening with the OPEC. So hopefully.
Final question for you.
Exactly.
We're out of time. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today on.